The exhibition begins with the Shakespeare First Folio. That book of 1621, when his words for the first time became a book that could travel the world. We've, in the exhibition, tried to show the world in which he and his people lived.
Ours is a show about Shakespeare's world, Shakespeare's staging of the world. The idea behind the show is that as the world comes to London in 2012, the Olympic summer, we're going to look at how the world came to London and how London saw the world, the exchanges between London and the world 400 years ago in Shakespeare's time. A time of tourism, it was a time of migration, a time of global exchange. So many aspects of the modern world, our modern globalized world, have their origins in Shakespeare's time. And many of the curators here at the museum fed into the process. But what emerged was an idea of using Shakespeare's imagined places as a way of focusing the exhibition. So when you come in to Elizabethan London, the London in which Shakespeare's plays were performed, and you see what it was like to be a visitor or a resident in London at that time. But then you go through into the next room to the Forest of Arden, the place where Shakespeare was born in the country. And then you go outwards. You go out to Venice, which was a very important location if you think of Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice or Othello, the Moor of Venice. Then you go back in time. In Shakespeare's time, history and geography were closely related to each other. The past was one of the ways of understanding the present. So we go to ancient Rome and ancient Egypt, where Shakespeare also set his plays, to medieval England, to his exploration of the history of his own nation. Then we go through to the moment, and this is very interesting in relation to our own moment, the moment where England and Scotland came together under King James, and he invented a new entity called Britain. And ultimately, in the final room, we go to the imaginary new world, the brave new world of Shakespeare's last play, The Tempest, set on a mysterious island full of magic that seems simultaneously to be in the Mediterranean, looking back to the old world, and in the Bermudas, the Caribbean, looking forward to the new, recently discovered world. And I think that's it. Shakespeare's theatre was called the Globe, and globes were new things in Shakespeare's time. If you were an ordinary English man or woman, it was probably only after 1580, when Francis Drake circumnavigated the globe, that you really began to have a sense of what a globe was. So it's very fitting that Shakespeare's theatre in 1599, his new theatre, was named for the globe, because he was genuinely a global figure, perhaps the greatest global export this country has ever produced.
So this is a fantastic portrait that's been lent from Birmingham University. It's normally shown in Stratford-upon-Avon itself. And it's the portrait of Abd-el-Wahid Ben Masoud, who was the Moroccan ambassador, the ambassador of the King of Barbary. He came with his retinue of noble Moors, attired like this with white turbans and very wonderful, exciting weapons and their rather sinister presence. And they were in London for 6 months, arousing huge public interest. And Shakespeare probably performed to them, didn't he, Jonathan?
Yeah, his acting company played at court while the ambassador's delegation was there. Well, one of the reasons the theatre was so vibrant in Shakespeare's time was that it had royal patronage. First Queen Elizabeth, then King James, wanted a ready supply of new plays which could be put on at court for celebrations, visiting diplomatic delegations and so forth. And that means that Shakespeare always has to be very politically alert in his writing. The court censor was watching over the plays, and indeed one of our most prized objects here is the only surviving scene written in Shakespeare's handwriting.
It's just round the corner.
Which is just round the corner. It's from a play called Sir Thomas More, and it was about riot on the streets of London, a riot about immigration. It was so politically sensitive that the play was banned. The censor didn't allow it to be staged, and that actually is why the manuscript survives. All Shakespeare's plays that were staged, eventually his handwritten manuscripts went into the playhouse and then the printing house, and once the printer had finished with them, he threw them away. They were of no value. So the British Library has lent us the only bit of working manuscript by Shakespeare, the scene from the multi-authored play of Sir Thomas More that was never staged.
And that amazing sense of human traffic in the plays and the traffic of objects in the exhibition that show cultures coming together and trying to understand each other is very much one of the themes of the exhibition.
One of the ideas I came up with, I said, I've always been intrigued at the end of Othello. Othello says that he has a second weapon, a sword of Spain. And I said to Dora, we need a sword of Spain. I don't know what a sword of Spain looked like. What were the associations of a sword of Spain? And further around the exhibition, you'll see a fabulous sword of Spain that Dora found. And it was really in that kind of dialogue between us that the show emerged.
Yes, it was great fun hunting that one down. I was thinking originally going to the Armoria Madrid because a Spanish sword is one of the early branding in early modern Europe. This is the brand accessory, the noble fashion accessory that you have to have if you were a gentleman. And it's a noble weapon for a noble Moor to choose to kill himself with. So it's Shakespeare reminding us at the moment of Othello's suicide that he is still a noble Moor of royal descent, still this incredibly dignified, morally dignified figure. But by having this noble weapon and showing it to you, you can make those connections in your own mind.
If you weren't literate or couldn't afford the big heavy book of Holinshed's Chronicles, all you had to do was pay a penny and go to the theatre, and you could see the history of the English nation being acted out on stage. In Shakespeare's play Henry V, where there's a particular reference near the end of the play to the helmet and sword of King Henry V. And one of our most prized exhibits, lent to us by Westminster Abbey, is the so-called funeral achievements of King Henry V. His shield, sword, helmet and saddle. Dora.
It was really wonderful to get these from Westminster Abbey. They were very generous to lend them to us. They've been in the Abbey as a group since 1422 until 1972, when they were removed to the museum there. And they've never left the Abbey in this particular group before. Those of you who know James Shapiro's marvellous book, Shakespeare, 1599, A Year in the Life of Shakespeare, will know that he speculates that Shakespeare may have attended Spencer's funeral in the Abbey and have seen these amazing tattered relics of this great warrior King Henry V hanging suspended on a beam in Westminster Abbey over the chantry of Henry V. And it's been wonderful to bring the objects from the sacred space of the Abbey to this recreated secular space of the Playhouse here in the exhibition, and to put them together with the famous speech, the St. Crispin's Day speech of Henry V, so that you can see how objects make history as well as texts. They're working in parallel.
So the last object in the exhibition is another copy of the works of Shakespeare, the copy that was used in Robben Island, the only work of literature read by the prisoners who were fighting apartheid, and in the copy of which the different anti-apartheid leaders marked the passages that meant most to them. And it's a wonderful symbol of what Shakespeare has come to mean for all of us.
We had to open it at one page. We show other pages, but we had to open it at one page, and it had to be the page in Julius Caesar, which is signed by Nelson Mandela. And it's a page about, it's a section about the nature of courage. Jonathan, do you want to actually quote that and explain its significance?
Well, it's to do with how many times do you die? People die many times. But courage is the thing that makes you continue to live. So it's to do with facing up to death with a sense of endurance, with courage, which of course is something that everybody in Robben Island did every day.